This is when it all started, in 2015, the so-called migration crisis. At the heart of it, the question, how does Europe want to deal with migrants? It's a question that might determine the outcome of the European elections in May. In the past, many migrants disembarked here, in Sicily. But these pictures are old. Nowadays, this is what the port of Palermo looks like, calm and empty. So this is where my journey starts. As a journalist, I deal with the topic of migration almost on a daily basis. It's really everywhere, no matter whom you ask. And you know what? Rationally, I can't really explain why that's the case. So I ask myself, does Europe really have a migration crisis? This is one of the last NGO ships to go out to sea, the Mare Ionio, rescuing migrants in the Mediterranean.
This area is for the guests.
I met Mission Chief Luca Casarini, a well-known activist in Italy, in early spring in Palermo. Back then, he was still preparing their first trip. The ship's no spring chicken, built in the 70s, but for Casarini, it's still the promise of a better future.
Help this person signify a new Europe, a new idea of Europe, a new idea of civil society, a new idea, new and old in reality. But in this time of the middle, it's necessary say another time that the life is important. And we say, first save the life, and then we can have a discussion about immigration, about problem of distribution, but first save.
That's what Italy did for many years. Remember pictures like these? They're from 2017. That year alone, about 120,000 people arrived by sea on Italian shores. In 2019, it's a different story. By mid-March, officially, not even 400 migrants had made it. And still, migration is expected to be one of the decisive factors in the elections for this House, the European Parliament. Some EU parliamentarians milk the topic as much as they can.
Chômage de masse et immigration massive. Ah, mon Dieu, qu'il est difficile de revenir à la réalité.
Und zwar vor allem durch eine völlig verfehlte Migrationspolitik.
Dare una mano all'Italia e difendere le frontiere esterne.
That's why for the crew of the NGO ship, it's not just about the mission, it's also about the message. First of all, show that not all Italians agree with the hard line of the government. After all, the money was mostly crowdfunded. And secondly, hit home their point that Europe can and must take in many more migrants than some people think. Alessandra Schiorbia is one of the key figures behind the mission and fights for that message. I asked her whether she thinks that Europe is still in a migration crisis.
It's a question of political propaganda, unfortunately, and this is not the first moment in which it happens. It is like that from many, many years, and of course there is no emergency. Everything is built by mainstream rhetoric, and there will be the possibility to manage a structural, normal phenomenon such as migration in a normal, human and legal way, but I think there is not the institutional will to do that, and it's a pity.
The popular Interior Minister, Matteo Salvini, has a quite different view. He tries to prevent migrants on NGO ships from disembarking on Italian ports. He told me so himself when I met him last year. Unfazed by this, the Mare Ionio rescued 49 people on its first trip. But in Palermo, this legendary melting pot of cultures, not everybody is happy with that.
fatto in the center. In Sicily, we will put the Sicily.
I met Igor Gelarda. He's a local politician for Matteo Salvini's Lega party. Sicily is no traditional stronghold for the Lega. People here used to shun the party because it originated in the north of the country. But with migration being such a hot topic, it is gaining traction in Palermo, in spite of less and less migrants actually arriving here. Now, Gelarda is running for the European Parliament and has a good chance of being elected. I wanted to understand his rationale and grabbed some coffee with him. After all, this is Italy.
Certamente che abbiamo il problema dell'immigrazione. Il problema dell'immigrazione non è legato soltanto alle persone che entrano, è legato al fatto che in Africa e in Asia ci sono miliardi di persone che spingono sull'Europa perché l'Europa è ricca, l'Europa è importante, in Europa c'è il mito che si vive bene.
Even if this is true, doesn't Italy have much more important challenges to tackle? Is the Lega just after the votes it can get with the migration topic?
Certo, l'immigrazione io direi che più che essere un buon argomento per prendere voti, l'immigrazione è sentito come un problema. Fai conto di una cosa, qui siamo a Ballarò, il mercato è bellissimo, la maggior parte della gente è brava gente, noi in questo momento abbiamo l'Ascia Nera, che è la mafia nigeriana, che sta sviluppando dei contatti con la mafia locale. Questo l'ha detto la direzione distrettuale antimafia. Quindi la gente ha capito che c'è questa criminalità anche straniera, quindi non è un problema di prendere voti, è un problema che è sentito molto dalla gente. La gente vuole più sicurezza e sappiamo che la mafia locale, che dobbiamo sconfiggere, più la mafia nigeriana, stanno creando una pericolosissima sintesi.
Fear-mongers, racists, even fascists. Those labels are often tagged on politicians like Gelarda from their opponents. Some of the Lega policies certainly provide ground for those accusations. But my experience is also that even populist claims can only hold if there is some truth to what they say. And the Nigerian mafia really has become a problem in Palermo. Of course, there are a lot of reasons to criticize the Lega party, but one thing is indisputable, their success. People, especially here in Palermo, feel like other political parties are not addressing their concerns. For example, migration. And they actually believe that the Lega will do something about it. Time to meet the people that all the fuss is about. Dancing lessons for migrants, another NGO project. Many of the young men and women here are economic migrants, not political refugees. This distinction is extremely important in the whole debate. Mustafa Jarju is an economic migrant. That means he doesn't get political asylum and could get sent back to his home country of the Gambia. I have many questions for him, but the first one is obviously what he is doing dancing around here.
That's a very good question. I love the question. Well, let's say this is something very important for me because first I will tell you, if not this thing, I would have been at home. What would I be doing at home? I would be doing nothing. But today we are here to show these people that we have some capacity, we have some talents that we can do. We are here to dance, storytelling, and do other kind of things. That's what we are here today.
So the key word is integration, and NGOs like this one are trying to be creative about it and help where they can. But the two main elements for integration are usually beyond their grasp: a job and proof of residency, both of which Mustafa doesn't have.
Maybe, but I don't think
After
so.
the dancing lesson, I have a chat with him. He tells me about his 5 brothers and 4 sisters back home in the Gambia. We discuss his hope of finding a girlfriend and his fear of being sent back. And then we talk about the perception he had of Europe before coming here.
If somebody should explain you about Europe, it's just like you just want to be there. Exactly, it's like paradise. You understand? So you will just feel like being there within a blink of an eye.
But then it's not like that.
But then it's not like that. When you arrive here, then you realize that Europe is not the way you thought it is.
Did you feel welcome when you came here?
Yeah, I feel welcome when I came here. Yeah, I feel welcome when I came. I could say that even 100 times I could say that, because I've seen many people who haven't make it to arrive here. So if I make it, they didn't make it to arrive here. So if I make it to arrive here, and today I'm able to speak the eternal language, not very good, but I'm able to express myself the way I want to be, and I'm here today talking with you, then I'm going to thank God for that. Okay. I'm going to tell you that I'm welcomed.
So you would do it again?
No, I don't think so. I don't think so. Even my enemy, I won't advise him or her to take this journey again.
Why?
Because it's a very risky and dangerous journey.
The journey itself?
Yeah, it's very dangerous.
But being here is okay?
Being here, yeah, it's okay being here. Because Africa and Europe is not the same.
And with that, he means that in spite of all the difficulties, being in Europe is still better than being in the Gambia. But for how long he can stay is up in the air. Governments all over Europe are cracking down on economic migrants.
You know, thinking about all the people we met here, of course, you have all kinds of views on migration, people against it, people for it. But one key word that appeared in every discussion I had here in Palermo was integration. Integration determines whether Europe really has a migration problem or not. And not only Palermo needs to integrate. One country especially really has a lot to do in that respect, and it's much farther north.
Even with Palermo being beautiful, most migrants arriving in Sicily in the past wanted to come to Germany. Roughly 1.6 million migrants applied for asylum here in the last 4 years. This is Cottbus in eastern Germany, about 2,300 kilometers from Palermo.
For many migrants arriving in Europe in 2015 and 2016, Germany was the dream destination. And some of them also ended up here. So the question is, how has integration worked out here? And I can tell you this, in the year 2019, many of those people behind me think it hasn't worked out at all.
Another Saturday, another protest march in Cottbus. The organizers are from a local association called Homeland Future. But this is not a local phenomenon. People from hundreds of kilometers away have come to demonstrate. The motto of the event, drawing borders.
Grenzen ziehen heißt das heute, ne? Das ist, glaube ich, das Motto. Was verstehen Sie darunter?
Grenzen ziehen. Kontrollierte Einwanderung.
Ja. Aber schon Einwanderung.
Ja, Einwanderung, ja. Für die verfolgt werden und Krieg ist in Ordnung. Mit Ausweisen im Rahmen, aber nicht so massig. Massen ist nicht. Massen geht nicht.
Und hier sind ganz, ganz viele Wirtschaftsflüchtlinge und keine, die verfolgt werden. So sehe ich das jedenfalls.
Und was hat sich dadurch verschlechtert hier in der Region?
Die Sicherheit zum Beispiel und die innere Sicherheit, ja.
Christoph Berndt is the man who mobilizes the discontented month after month. I'm a little surprised at how diverse the hot-button issues are. It's not just migration. It's also Germany's energy transition to renewable resources and the feeling of being betrayed by those up there. Also, they don't like journalists. Listen to this. It's one of their favorite slogans. It means there's no right to Merkel's propaganda. This questions whether the press is really free in Germany.
Of course, not everybody here wants to talk to us, but those that do are surprisingly diverse. You have people from the far left, you have people from the far right, and all in between, but there's a very real concern here by many people that the migration process is out of control in Germany, that the borders are open, whether it's true or not, and who feel threatened in their future and their safety.
Just a reminder, this is how it all started back in 2015. I filmed these scenes with a colleague down in Budapest when tens of thousands of migrants were desperately trying to get on a train to Germany. Then Germany opened its borders, and the German Chancellor made her statement for the history books.
Wir haben so vieles geschafft, wir schaffen das. Wir haben so vieles geschafft, wir schaffen das.
What happened back then is what is still driving people like Christoph Berndt, the man behind the protests in Cottbus, and the nationalist AfD party he supports. I sat down with him for a longer interview. Here are some excerpts.
Ich weiß nicht, ob man von Integration reden kann. Also das ist der falsche Begriff dafür. Es geht darum, wie schafft man Bedingungen, dass das Miteinanderleben vernünftig ist, erträglich ist und konfliktarm ist. So. Und da ist natürlich schon mal klar, die schiere Zahl von 1,5 oder 2 Millionen, die schafft schon Probleme, weil die natürlich für ein gedeihliches Zusammenleben Probleme schafft, allein dadurch, dass da Communities entstehen, die wiederum als Magnet für andere Menschen wirken und insofern natürlich die Tendenz in sich haben, sich eben nicht mit dem Gastland zu verzahnen, sondern abzuschotten. Und wenn die EU eine Existenzberechtigung haben will, dann hat sie dringend die Außengrenzen Europas zu kontrollieren. Damit man eben unterscheidet, wer ist wirklich Flüchtling, wer ist wirklich verfolgt. Natürlich ist das möglich, man muss nur wollen. Das ist ganz einfach möglich. Das Problem muss gelöst werden. Wenn die Entwicklung einfach so weitergeht, handelt man vollkommen verantwortungslos. Es führt zu Zuständen in Europa, mit denen niemandem gedient ist.
There you have it. Europe is on the verge of collapse. That's the picture Berndt is painting. It seems coherent, logical, and could cause you some sleepless nights. But is that the reality? Let's ask the experts, the police in Cottbus. They should know a thing or two about security and crimes committed by migrants. This is Ines Filon. You could call her a committed Cottbusian with a sense of humor. She's prepared all the statistics. The most important one to her, 246 criminal assaults by young migrants in 2018, almost twice as many as the year before.
Wir haben so ungefähr in der Stadt 3.500 Personen mit Migrationshintergrund, die wir dazu rechnen, wo seit 2015 diese Menschen zu uns gekommen sind. Und wir haben es immer unterschiedlich, so 30 bis 50 Personen davon sind auffällig. Also man kann es auch nicht pauschalisieren, sondern der Personenkreis ist übersichtlich. Zumeist handelt es sich dabei um junge Männer. Entweder da liegen keine Konfliktbewältigungsstrategien vor, also miteinander zu kommunizieren, das tritt da nicht so in den Vordergrund. Kommt immer auch darauf an, wie bin ich sozialisiert worden. Und wenn ich im Krieg sozialisiert wurde, dann sind die Umgangsformen dementsprechend auch rauer.
That's one of the points critics of current migration policies stress. In their view, migrants from Africa and the Middle East just don't fit in. Some high-level crimes committed by migrants seem to justify that view. But for Filon, it's not that easy.
Ja, es sind ein paar exponierte Straftaten darunter, wenn zum Beispiel jemand mit einem Messer angegriffen wurde, anschließend notoperiert werden musste. So ganz exponierte Straftaten. Das ängstigt natürlich die Menschen, wenn es dann noch besonders verstärkt wird von einzelnen Personen. Insofern steigert sich die Angst natürlich.
Okay, aber Sie haben also tatsächlich den Eindruck, die Leute haben eigentlich so viel schlimmer ist es nicht geworden, um so viel mehr Angst zu haben.
Nein, wenn man es dezidiert betrachtet und die Fälle ganz im Konkreten, können wir nicht sagen, dass man hier mehr Angst haben muss.
It's probably also our fault. The media tends to report just bad news. All right, let's change that.
We hear a lot about crimes committed by migrants, and of course, that's an important factor. But then there are those that have managed to integrate, that are successful in an environment that at the very least could be called difficult.
This school helps tell a different story revolving around integration, especially the gym in the back. The Wichern School is a fast-growing facility for children with disabilities, and the climbing wall is one of their favorite pastimes.
Und hier?
Enter Rami Abu Salik. He helped construct the wall in this extension of the gym. It was his first project after arriving from Syria as a political refugee. In the beginning, even simple tasks were a challenge for the interior designer.
Was war die schwerste bei mir ist die neue Architektur und Designworte zu lernen. Ich kenne alle auf Englisch und Arabisch, aber die deutsche unterscheidet sich. Es gibt viele schwierige Worte, die ich gelernt habe. Zum Beispiel Direction in Englisch, zum Beispiel West, Ost. Süd zum Beispiel. Dann habe
Süden.
Ich mache immer Fehler mit dieser Direction jetzt. Ich muss immer Google Translator benutzen. So Süd, Nord und North. Ja.
Nur grün, genau.
Juliane Lindner is the project manager and Abu Salik's boss. She trusted his skills early on and obviously still does.
Wieso haben Sie sich entschlossen, ihn zu nehmen? War das eine aktive Integrationsmaßnahme oder haben Sie gesagt, der hat es einfach drauf?
Na, ich würde mal sagen, weder noch. Wir haben gesagt, wir probieren es einfach mal, ja. Er war nett, er ist Innendesigner, Architekt. Wir dachten, wir können was, einfach mal probieren.
Und jetzt kann man aber sagen, Experiment geglückt, oder?
Experiment auf jeden Fall geglückt, ja. Ohne ihn würden wir jetzt ganz schön alt aussehen, ja.
Und ist es denn so, also was sagen Sie denn zu den Leuten, die sagen, die ganzen Migranten sind nicht integrierbar in Deutschland?
Ach, na, das ist ja dummes Gerede. Was soll man dazu sagen? Das ist einfach Quatsch, ja.
Was müsste man tun in Deutschland, Ihrer Meinung nach?
Ja, auf jeden Fall muss man Mittel und Wege finden, sage ich mal, frühzeitig wirklich die Sprache zu fördern und dass alle über Kurse und Maßnahmen Deutsch lernen. Es ist wirklich das Wichtigste hier. Selbst Englisch reicht nicht, konnte man am Anfang natürlich über die Runden, aber ansonsten muss Deutsch gelernt werden. Und natürlich, dass man seitens der Universitäten und Bildungseinrichtungen vielleicht auch in der Abendschule neue Studiengänge oder Vorbereitungssachen oder Aufbaustudiengänge entwickelt, damit die Studien, die Sie gemacht haben, auch in Deutschland adäquat eingesetzt werden können. Das gibt ja hier andere Bestimmungen, Richtlinien, das ist alles nicht so einfach. Ne?
Yup, Germany can be an intransparent place when you come from abroad.
I must say personally, I am impressed as well. Him coming here in this very difficult situation, creating his own niche, really being a factor now at work, being important at work, learning the language, all that is really impressive. I don't know if I would have been able to do that. But, the other side of the story, of course, is that not all migrants are like that. By the way, not all Germans are like that.
No question, Rami Abu Salik has managed to make himself a home in Fost, a small town not far from Cottbus. I remind myself that the reason he came here was and remains a nightmare, the war in Syria. He's of Palestinian descent and is now stateless. He can't go back, even if he wanted to. His life now is unlike most stories we hear about migrants.
Niemand möchte etwas sehen auf Facebook oder YouTube, dass man zum Beispiel arbeitet 8 Stunden, hat die Sprache gelernt. Das ist langweilig. Ja, deshalb haben wir ein Problem, ein Integrationsproblem, weil viele Leute verstehen uns gar nicht. Sie glauben, wenn sie einen Araber sehen oder einen Muslimer oder einen Flüchtlinger, Ausländer, einfach sehen, sie haben dieses typische Bild im Kopf, dass sie sind nicht gute Menschen, sie nehmen unsere Steuer, wissen Sie, was meine ich, ja. Aber es geht mit Zeit. Ja. Hier in glaube ich, in Ostdeutschland ist es schwerer als andere Länder. Ich habe Freunde und Bekannte in anderen Bundes, aber es geht. Ja. Hier in Forst habe ich kein Problem.
Of course, when his family joined him 2 years ago, it made things easier. His 4-year-old daughter, Julie, goes to a German kindergarten. And at the time of filming, his wife Ruba was days away from giving birth to their second child. By the way, this painting on the wall means home. The family really seems to be doing everything they can to belong. So does Rami Abu Salik feel like Germany has a migration crisis?
Ich kann das nur teilweise zustimmen, weil manchmal es gibt ein Problem, wenn zum Beispiel viele Kriminalität, wie heißt das auf Deutsch, keine Ahnung, aber viele Criminals Ja, die machen viele schlechte Sachen und bleiben hier. Und das macht uns auch Stress, nicht nur die Deutschen. Muss man sagen, nicht alle Leute akzeptieren uns in dieser Gesellschaft. Ja.
Okay.
Stressig. Aber geht.
Okay.
Muss man kämpfen. Ja.
It's a fight all across Europe that won't be over for a long time, that much is clear. The results of the European elections will tell us a lot about which direction the citizens of the EU want to go in that respect.
So that's it. Trip from Palermo to Cottbus. And are we any closer to the answer to the question, does the EU really have a migration crisis? If you look at the numbers, not really anymore. But it's clear, Europe sustained such a shock in 2015 and 2016 that many people on the continent are traumatized. And some political parties are benefiting from that. And as long as that's the case, you have to say that in a political sense, at least, Europe still has a migration crisis. Where's the unicorn?
Around 2.93 million foreigners were living in Japan as of the end of 2020. That's a record high, propelled by a surge in technical trainees and overseas students. However, with international travel restrictions due to the pandemic, that streak of 5 years increase could come to an abrupt end. For foreigners who are already in Japan, they are making the necessary adjustment to live and work in a Japanese society still steeped in tradition. Among them are the Vietnamese, the third largest group of foreigners in Japan after China and South Korea. こんにちは。どうも。
お疲れ様でございました。
お邪魔します。
いらっしゃいませ。本日はありがとうございますが、誠に恐れ入りますが、検温させていただいてもよろしいですか。
はい、お願いします。
失礼いたします。
Following COVID-19 preventive measures, I checked in and walked the long and maze-like corridor. There goes Mr. Chen. Now he's the first Vietnamese to work for this inn, Shirakabeso. And so far it seems that he's getting accustomed to the job here. But I must say, he must work harder on his Japanese. 5 other Vietnamese work here. Thuyen, Nguyen, and Hoa joined last July. Hailing from different parts of Vietnam, the workers came to Japan for different reasons, and they didn't know each other until they met at this inn. The COVID-19 pandemic brought them together. Gan and Van are the newest members of the Vietnamese crew. Yuka Suzuki is the 4th generation Okami or proprietress of Shirakabeso. The 40-year-old succeeded her mother in 2018 as the face of this family-owned inn. The inn, which was founded in 1954, located in the Izu region of Shizuoka Prefecture, a place known for its natural beauty that has inspired generations of Japanese writers. Yasunari Kawabata, the first Japanese writer to receive the Nobel Prize for Literature, completed the Izu Dancer, a short story published in 1925 during his stay in Izu at another inn. Shirakabeso itself had hosted another award-winning writer, Yasushi Inoue. His favorite room remains with his portrait. But this refuge of peace and serenity is not spared from the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic.
旧スタッフがやはり高齢ですとか、コロナウイルスの が怖いということで退職された方も多かったんですね。
Izu is one of the fastest aging cities in Japan, with 40% of the population over the age of 65. It's facing a serious labor shortage. Couldn't find new workers from among the locals. Yuka made a decision that's unheard of in this secluded city. She decided to hire foreigners to fill the vacancies. Residents here are not used to having foreigners among them, including her parents.
スタッフとしてはなかなか言葉の壁だとか文化の壁があるのでとても難しいかなと思いましたけれども。
Through a placement agent, Yuka met Chan from central Vietnam. Chan's bright personality and warmth eventually won over Yuka's parent, and they decided to hire more Vietnamese and train them.
前面に出て仕事をするのはちょっと無理だろうと最初は思ってたわけですね。ただやってもらいましたら非常に熱心で話を1回するだけでも飲み込んですぐできるわけですね。
こんにちは。はい、どうぞお邪魔します。はい、お帰りください。
こんにちは。
Van and Gun are Yuka's latest hires. I was invited to their apartment. Their employer helps pay part of the rent for this place. Van told me about her previous job at another inn. It wasn't a pleasant experience.
前の私の仕事は事務所での仕事ですね。そんな仕事は接客とお客様を探す仕事です。お客様がいないと売り上げがないと給料がありませんですから、そんなことで転職しました。コロナのせいで。
Gan worked at the same inn with Van. After she graduated from a university in Vietnam, she worked for a Japanese company near home. She came to Japan hoping to brush up on her language skills and start a new career. Things didn't turn out as planned.
Actually, last year I did try to get back to Vietnam once, but because the COVID, we don't have any planes to go around, so. And then I decided to find a job here to keep my life here.
Van and Gan recounted what happened to them with little emotions. But Yuka told me she found out from the work placement agent they were registered with that Van and Gan were mistreated by their previous employers.
朝6時から夜11時までその日光の旅館で、通常業務としたら5人分ぐらい働いてたんですよね。総支給がもうこの実労に見合ってない金額も聞いたんですけども、まあそれは本当にいわゆるブラックで。
Trying to plug a growing labor gap, Japan has stepped up efforts to bring in more foreign workers from Asian countries like Vietnam for low-skilled jobs at its farms and factories. But as the number of foreign workers increases, there are more reports about poorly paid foreign workers being mistreated in Japan.
私どもはもう日本のスタッフと同じように正社員で雇用しております。まあ、待遇などもすべて日本のスタッフと変わらず、受け入れております。
Business at Shirakabe-so has been quiet due to the pandemic. Still, Yuka needs her new employees because she is still hopeful that the Tokyo Olympic Games will go ahead as planned in July. With Izu City selected to host track and mountain bike cycling, inns and hotels nearby are expecting an influx of foreign guests when the games happen.
オリンピックも予定されておりますので、日本の和食を英語でご案内するそんな研修も控えております。また秋に向けたおもてなし研修、おもてなし検定の取得、和食検定の取得。
If one day the Vietnamese decide to leave Shirakabe-so, Yuka hopes the certificate will help them find jobs at prestigious inns and hotels. But her genuine wish is that they stay.
こちらが限界集落になりますものですから、やはり地域のパワーとして若いこのスタッフの力を宿以外にもインパワーできたらいいなと思ってまして、そういう意味でも定住永住を、してくれるようなサポートを今整えている最中です。
According to the Immigration Office, currently about 420,000 Vietnamese live in Japan. That's an increase of about 25% from the end of 2018. Some of them may want to stay in Japan for a long time or even permanently. If they do, they might want to start a family. And if they do start a family, they'll have to adapt also to the Japanese education system. Now, a district in Mie Prefecture may serve as an example. I'll take you there. The new visa 2 years ago to attract overseas blue-collar workers is to address the country's acute labor shortage due to a rapidly aging population and declining birth rates. Such move will see more foreigners living and working among the Japanese who are monocultural. But at least one Japanese city has had a large immigrant population for decades now. Its experience may serve as a model for other local governments who also want more foreigners among them. This apartment complex in Yokkaichi City in Mie Prefecture is unlike any other in Japan. A third of the residents are foreigners. Many work at the factories nearby. Here, signs in Portuguese and Spanish telling residents where not to walk their pets and how to sort their trash are a common feature. Next to the apartment is a street filled with business establishments carrying signs in Portuguese. Mauro Hatano, a Brazilian of Japanese descent, owns this restaurant.
自分で商売もやってましたもんここでね。結局向こうがインフレがすごい上がってたで、やっぱり車壊れたりとか修理とかめっちゃ高いです。ちょうどチャンスがあった日本に来るようにね。で私と弟手続きをしてでも1ヶ月以内にできた。
He's been here 20 years. His children have grown up and left him. The influx of foreigners, especially Brazilians, began in the 1990s after the relaxation of the immigration law. Today, here in Sasagawa district in Yokkaichi City, 20% of the population are Brazilians or other foreigners. Many of the immigrants here have Japanese ancestry, allowing them to apply for a work permit in Japan. Yokkaichi used to be regarded as a model city for how its local community and large foreign population managed to acclimatize to each other. I met Mr. Hatano on a trip organized by the Foreign Ministry, who was eager to showcase his efforts to help foreigners adapt to life in Japan. More than ever, local governments in Japan want the immigrant communities to thrive. They want to bring in more foreigners to help keep the demographics young and plug a severe labor shortage.
人口の規模っていうのは、町の力の源泉だと思ってますので、ある程度の人口を維持していくことを考えるとですね、やはりこの外国人の方の力を借りていく必要があると思いますし。
Mie Prefecture, a manufacturing hub west of Tokyo, also wants to accommodate more Vietnamese and Nepalese.
製造業だったり、あるいは地域のお祭りのことだったり、そういうのを支えていただく重要な存在なので、うまく文化とか、背景によって風習とかが違うところありますけれども、そういうのをコミュニケーションして乗り越えていって、一緒に暮らしていけるような形にしたいですね。
But in Yokkaichi, officials told me that many first-generation immigrants struggle because they don't speak Japanese and their children are more likely to fall behind in school in Japan. That's why in 2005, local authorities started a project called Children's Class, offering free tuition to South American children of Japanese ancestry who moved to Japan with their parents. I was invited to visit the children there. I was told these students come from Brazil, Bolivia, Peru, and the Philippines. Many are from poor homes and can't afford prep school. Coaching them are mostly retired teachers.
日本の友達はいっぱいできています。
私も日本のこと勉強しやすいし言葉が分かりやすい。子ども教室に来たら算数や国語がもっと分かるようになることです。
A 2019 survey by the Education Ministry showed that close to 20,000 foreign children registered in Japan are not going to school for compulsory education. The ministry also says in 2018, children born to parents of foreign nationals who need Japanese language support rose 5 years in a row to over 50,000. Nearby Nishisasagawa Junior High School is a public school that has been designated by local authorities to accept foreign students and hire teaching staff with foreign language ability to accommodate them. 40% of its students are foreign nationals and many with South American roots.
ポルトガル語しか使ったらあかん時間もあるよっていうふうにやりましたね。だからみんなでポルトガル語をしゃべる時間、みんなで英語をしゃべっている時間、みんなで日本語をしゃべっている時間っていうのを作っていて、その言葉を使って逆にどんどんコミュニケーションを取らせるとかっていうふうなことをしていけばいいのかなと。
As of 2020, foreign residents account for 2.3% of Japan's total population, up from just 1.3% a decade ago. According to the Science Council of Japan, half of the foreign residents who are already in Japan are expected to settle in Japan and have children. Back in Amagi district of Izu City in Shizuoka Prefecture, a group of Vietnamese workers look set to make this formerly undisturbed neighborhood their home. They may be the pioneers who will permanently change this place. Local residents are not used to seeing foreign workers in this area, and Shirakabe-so may have changed that mindset with the success of its Vietnamese workers. It seems like some inns and businesses here are starting to think about employing foreign workers. Hiring foreigners has helped Yuka Suzuki see her business in a new light.
日本文化のおもてなし、旅館のおもてなしが必ずしも日本人だけにしかできないということがないということが分かりました。
The hospitality that she and her staff will be ready to demonstrate if the Tokyo Olympic Games are held as planned. Japan is not the only country whose labor market is forced to adapt due to the pandemic. Now, in the US, NGOs are finding new ways to help refugees and asylum seekers find jobs in restaurants after many were shuttered due to the pandemic.
Over the last 10 months, Yusuf Mubaraz has watched his deli lose 75% of its business. Located just off of Times Square in New York City, he relies heavily on tourist foot traffic, which is all but dried up.
We're not a Fortune 500 company, so we make our money on the small local transactions and the juices and the drinks and the sandwiches.
When we last saw Yusuf in May, he'd received government help with a stimulus-backed loan, but it wasn't enough.
The rent has always been very high, but we've been able to make it over the years. But at this point, it's not profitable for us or for the long term either way. We don't know when it's going to get back, so we're making plans to shut it down.
The business his family has owned for 20 years will close in the next few months. And it's a similar story in other parts of Manhattan. His cousin's deli nearby shut down. In Washington, D.C., the organisation Tables Without Borders has had to adapt. Usually they'd find positions in restaurant kitchens for refugees and asylum seekers. But back in April, with restaurants closed, their chefs cooked 10,000 free meals that they bagged up and distributed to vulnerable communities. Now that eateries have partially reopened in the US capital, they've changed their business model again, allowing their intern chefs to return to restaurants.
We provide the pay for the intern, and the restaurant, which is struggling, receives an extra hand for free in the kitchen during the duration of the internship. So it's actually a win-win.
As before, the organisation and its workers are unlikely to be eligible for government stimulus. But Sarah Abdelrahim is hopeful about another policy from the new president, an increase in the number of refugees.
The Biden administration, if they stay true to their word, are looking to bring in 10 times more than what the Trump administration brought in. So when they get to that line item on their to-do list, which I think it's kind of lower on the priority list, we're excited to see kind of individuals from around the world coming and contributing to the U.S.
The small town of Marlow on the outskirts of London is one of the wealthiest places in the UK. On the banks of the Thames, it's a popular tourist destination and home to dozens of pubs and restaurants. But they're all either closed or offering takeaway only, forced to shut their doors as part of the third national lockdown. Chef Tom Kerridge is one of the most famous faces in the UK food scene. Cookbooks, TV series and Michelin stars, but his restaurants in Marlow are closed. Now he's trying to use his fame and influence to help the industry he loves.
The world cannot exist on Zoom calls alone. It has to be able to grow and develop, and hospitality provides that. So support for the industry is hugely important, because if you support that industry will support the growth of the country, everything coming back, the grassroots, the foundations of every other business is fundamentally deep-rooted into hospitality.
Unable to survive on small grants, many hospitality businesses have been forced to take out loans to cover overheads, but others have decided it's just not worth it. In an industry with tight profit margins, repeated lockdowns, often with little warning, have been too much for many to survive. Closures last year were triple what they were in 2019. Almost 10,000 licensed premises ceased trading, and many fear things will get worse before they get better. A petition calling for a dedicated minister for hospitality was signed by more than 200,000 people. That triggered a debate in Parliament.
We need one voice, a senior voice in government who invests in our industry and invests in meeting our business leaders and meeting everybody, our suppliers, to put our industry in the position within government that it should be. We're the third largest employer in the UK. 1 in 6 jobs that's created in the UK is in hospitality or was in hospitality.
The government has defended the support that's been provided to the industry, but stopped short of promising a dedicated minister. As the lobbying continues, many argue that vaccinations and returning to some sort of normality is the only long-term solution.
It will come back. Those places will operate again, because as human beings we will want to socially interact when it's safe and it's right and you can. The only issue will be that the people that are in the position of owning those businesses right now will probably not be the people that reopen them.
Recent scientific advice warned against reopening pubs until May. The fear is that many businesses simply won't be able to survive that long.